Chris, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Just living the life here in April. We had a little random snow flurries this morning, so
Really?
cold
We
day. Yeah.
actually we had some hail apparently this morning in California, out in LA. So it's I was in shock. I've never seen hail. So
Yeah, that's
well,
got
I
to be a
have seen hail
rarity.
in the past, but I've never seen hail in California. All right, but it's or like the world's ending, and apparently like New York had an earthquake as well. So we're like, what's going on? Like,
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. It's been
yeah,
crazy.
crazy.
It's been crazy.
Yeah.
How's the winter been there in LA?
It's been fun. It's been you know, warmer than last winter, I'll tell you that. But it's been like yesterday was kind of chilly. It started raining for probably like 30 minutes, which was kind of random as well. But then, it's probably like mid 50s, low 60s, which is like cold for us.
Yeah.
But today's a little, like I said, today's sunny. Like I look outside the window, it's nice and sunny, but like I said, in the morning it started hailing. So it's just random every other day. Like some weekends, like last weekend it rained. I think it was last weekend, I think, if my timeline's right. And then like a couple of days during this week it's been nice and sunny, and then like I said, rained briefly yesterday for a little.
Nice, man. Yeah, I lived in San Diego, and then I actually ended up living in Long Beach for a few months. But San Diego, man, I'll tell you,
Yeah,
the winters there,
yeah,
70
can't
and
beat that.
sunny every day. You can't. It's
Yeah, it's
unbelievable, man.
beautiful. Yes, I
But
love it. I love it down there. So nice. Can't go
yeah,
wrong with it.
surfing every
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah, that's
But
how it is. That's what you're supposed to do.
yeah, well, happy to have you on here, Chris. Happy to talk to you, man. Let's dive right in, man. Why don't you start telling us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, how you grew up?
Yeah, man. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm definitely looking forward to this. And then, yeah, I guess to kind of get into it, right? Um, yeah, so I always say people like I grew up everywhere. I've always, I was born in San Jose in California, right? Probably at the month, like 9 months, 10 months, I think, something like that. Moved to LA, lived there for probably like a year or so. Moved to Virginia, grew up in Virginia for 10 years. Um, after those 10 years, moved to Kansas, lived in Kansas for 3 years, then moved back to Virginia for like basically 6 months, and then moved out to LA again. And, grew up in LA for basically like, I would say 8 years, 7, 8 years, from like middle school to kind of to college, basically. So most of my I would say teenage life and adult life. And then went to college for, obviously 2 years, different spots, and then, went down to Mexico for some, for I would say my professional sports background. Went down there for a year, came back, went to Boston for 3 years, and then back to LA. So like I've been everywhere, right? Um, but yeah, that was just because of, family. My dad's job required like he's in the sports background, so like sports background, it's you're always kind of moving on the go type of thing because that's just the nature of the sport. And naturally for my background with that is that I was an athlete my whole life, right? Played soccer basically. That's the only sport I ever played. And yeah, throughout that whole process, I grew up, developing as a young kid, as a young teenager, as a young adult, and then eventually, like I said, reaching the professional ranks through that experience where I played down in Mexico and also out here in the U.S. for a bit as well. Um, but yeah, that's a little, I would say, overview of kind of like where I'm from. I like because when people ask me where I'm from, I say like everywhere, right? Because it's like I
Yeah,
spend so much time, but I call LA home now. So like I always tell people I'm from LA, because like born in California, grew up most of my life now in LA. So I say LA is the spot where I'm from. But yeah,
that's cool, man. That's quite an experience moving all over. I had the opposite experience.
yeah,
You know, I stayed in one spot until I was 20, and then I was all over. And
yeah,
it's kind of funny, because since I since I got out of the military, and I have a 2.5-year-old son, but I've moved 3, 4 times just all over, kind of similar to how you. What do you think? So it'd be interesting to kind of hear your thoughts on this. How do you think that moving that much kind of shaped like your childhood and kind of into who you are now. Like just having that many different experiences, because a lot of kids, they get in the same friend group and grow up with those kids for their whole life, whereas
Yeah.
you were, go
Yeah.
ahead, man.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt or cut you off, I guess. But no, like it's funny because like I'm still like best friends with my buddy, Patrick, who I grew up with in Virginia, right? Like we were like I would call him as like my childhood best friend, right? I have another, I would say, childhood best friend as well. His name's Jake, who, funny enough, is like he was my dad's college roommate slash teammate. That's his son, right? Because in in their world, like when my dad was like playing or coaching or whatever, like his dad was always my dad's like assistant coach or teammate. They're always coworkers. So like wherever we moved, like they came with us, except for LA. So like Virginia, we were there together for those 10 years. Kansas, we were there for those 3 years. Back to Virginia, and then basically after that, when we moved out to LA, they moved out to Wisconsin, and then we moved to LA. So like I've I still stay in touch with him every single day. So I have those two guys, right? But in regards to your question about like moving all over the place, like at first it was always annoying, right? Because like you would get comfortable, make your group of friends, and then eventually it's like, all right, time to move type of thing, right? And you're like, okay, like here we go, like time to, restart. But, I would say like if you asked me this question when I was a lot younger, I was always, I would say, maybe frustrated in a way, right? Because it's like, okay, time to reset, time to make a new friend group, time to kind of find my place again and all that type of stuff, right? But then, as I'm older now, right? Or fast forward, I see it as kind of like a blessing because it shows like the adaptability that you kind of need to have at times, right? In life, because it's, that's what happens, right? Things happen. You can't always control everything, but also like the beauty that I saw is like I was able to create friends from everywhere. I have friends that were from Kansas, friends from Virginia, friends that moved everywhere, and then naturally, like the world is a small world, and you get to meet them, and you see them. Like I've had some buddies who I know from Virginia and Kansas that live out here in LA, right? Or that I've known that when I was in Boston, they were in Boston. I ran into them randomly, type of thing, right? So like it's kind of funny how that type of stuff works, right? But um, I would say like I said at the beginning, it was like you know, not ideal. But I think as you get older, you start to realize that like, it's a good lesson to go through, I think, because
Yeah.
as things change, things are getting thrown at you. It's good to adapt and evolve. And then also at the end of the day, like, it's you kind of have to learn to kind of embrace it, right? Like
Yeah.
you get unique experiences, unique perspectives, um, and different understandings of like maybe what other people may be going through if they experience that, right? Where it's like, hey, I get that, I understand that, and you can have a conversation and help them out in that way, in a way, if that makes sense, right? But at the end of the day, I would always say it's like I always think it was a blessing because it's cool to just from all the experiences, the friends that I made, and it's just it's kind of created who I am today at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's really cool, man. That's real interesting. And one of the reasons I asked is because it's kind of like a common theme amongst like guys in the special operations community that I came from is they kind of all had like I don't want to say necessarily broken childhood, but moving. Sometimes it was broken. They were moving for reasons of like broken family type thing, but other times it was like from the
yeah,
years they just moving around, and it kind of creates that uncomfortability. But it kind of gets you like as a kid, like you have no idea that this is what's happening, right? You're just
yeah,
pissed because like you're leaving your friends and your teammates and
yeah.
whatever. But like it teaches you, like you said, that adaptability, and that's something that I found too. And like it's uh, it's definitely a trait that a lot of them have, and it kind of you're just getting like more comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because you're getting
Yeah,
forced into these new situations where like now you got to go meet
definitely.
new kids and you got to go try out for the sport team or whatever again. But I think it's like really good for growth, like overall, even though it's of course sometimes difficult on kids and frustrating, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely. Yeah, like I agree with that. And also at the same time, it's like I would say, trait or skill, right? That it taught me is like how to make friends, right? How to
Yeah.
talk to people, how to connect with people, because like you have to do that every time you move, right? Even though I was younger, right? I did that, but like to kind of like think about like my professional career once I stopped and then, I was in LA for a couple of years and then I was like, you know what, like I want to try something different. And I just decided to move to Boston, right? And I was there for 3 years. Like that was a whole new experience for me. And I wasn't really scared because I was like, I've moved so many times. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like maybe what's also ingrained in me too is like I've also noticed like I don't like staying in the same spot for so long. I like to kind of explore and try different things. And I wonder if it's because of that is why I'm kind of like that or think like that of like, you know what, like, oh, I want to go move here and try to live here for a year or two and see how that goes. And then from there can live here type of thing, right? Um, you could say I probably don't stay in one place for too long, but I just enjoy like the different, I think, perspectives, the different cultures, because like I feel like even though we're in the US, like every state is something different. It's so different, it's so unique. But I enjoy it at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's funny. It kind of becomes like a habit like that. And
Yeah.
see, what's crazy about that is I was the opposite, right? I lived in the same town, same house for the first 20 years of my
Yeah.
life. And then once I joined the military, spent almost 15 years traveling all over the place. And now, like, I'm out and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't stay in a spot more than a year or two, like I'm here for a year and I'm like, we got to move. Like, we got to go do something
Yeah.
new. And now it's kind of like, now I've got it ingrained in me too.
Yeah.
I'm the same way though, man. I like moving around. I like meeting new people. I like traveling, seeing new cultures, seeing new spots. Like it's that's just me, man. And it's funny because like my family, like my brothers, they're the opposite, man. They've grew up here and they're still at home. Like I mean, they have their own
Yeah.
families and kids and stuff now, and that don't live at my parents' house, but they're still in the same town doing the same stuff. Which I mean, there's some people are like that too, but I think once you get a taste of new things, it kind of
You
you
want
just
more.
have to have
Yeah,
more.
you
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
just
you
try
want
it.
more.
Yeah. It's funny because like my friends here, like we always talk about wanting to move out of LA, right? Like they want to move to like we talked about moving to Austin, right? We've talked about Florida. Like I'm a huge advocate of going to Florida because I'm like, for me, I'm like, if I'm gonna move again, right? I just want to be by the beach. I want to be somewhere warm by the beach. Like that's my goal is to be by the beach, right? So I'm like, Austin, I'm okay with, right? But it's not by the beach. I'm like, Florida would be probably ideal for me. Then they're like, maybe the Carolinas. I'm like, I wouldn't mind the Carolinas as well. But for them, it's like the only time they've probably ever moved out was probably college. But like, to really think about it, like one of them went to like Oregon for like a semester and was like, I'm out type of thing, right? And then like Oregon, right? And then they came back and then
Yeah,
went to school like 2 hours away where we grew up type of thing. I'm like, all right, like I'm like
yeah.
it's some people are used to that, right? They don't want to change and that's
Mhm.
okay, right? But
Yeah,
um I think I seek it at times, like I said.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's tough to kind of break the habit the whole life of being in the same spot, but
Yeah.
let's dive into your kind of journey here from moving from sports over to kind of the Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Who knows
Yeah.
now? But what got you following that path or kind of down that road?
Yeah. I think for me really like when I think about it, it's like I've had my account like forever, right? I was always like in the consumer space, like just a consumer, right? I was always just scrolling, just looking at stuff type of thing. I've always been entrepreneurial, right? I've always tried different stuff in the past, like when I was playing and also once I stopped playing, right? I still come from like an entrepreneurial background with when I have my own, businesses, I invest in real estate, all that type of stuff, invest in the market. So it's something that I feel like it's also been ingrained in me, right? Of like just trying to try something new, try different things to kind of live the life that I want at the end of the day, right? So I think I want to say like Eddie Kwan, if you know him, like he was like one of the first guys I really like came across on like I would say that Twitter slash X slash like I don't know if they call it like money Twitter or something like that, right? Um where I started to like really pay attention to kind of what he was saying. I was like, oh, like this is interesting. Like and then I just kept tracking and following him. Then I kind of explored like JK, Molina, Dan Coe and all those guys and like other people as well. And then eventually I was like, you know what, like why not try something with this, online Twitter thing and see how it kind of goes, right? So like that was basically like a year and 3 months ago, I want to say, a year and 4 months. I don't have the exact date, but I started with doing like stocks, trading, all that type of stuff, talking about that on X. And then next thing I was like, you know what? I don't like talking about this. So then I started talking about like real estate stuff, which I really enjoyed at the time. Talked about my experience and then eventually kind of, you know, in that process, I was like, I kind of like met like a stop in terms of like, okay, what else am I going to talk about? Like I'm just talking about the same things and I'm repeating it over and over again. So then I started talking about like the mindset stuff about being an entrepreneur and just mindset in general, like self-improvement as a whole. And then kind of dove deep into that. And then I got good feedback from it. Like people were like, oh, like I really like this perspective of like the mindset or like the self-improvement aspect when you become like a business owner or when you become a real estate investor or when you whatever trying to start something for yourself, right? um and then next thing you know, I just kind of focused on that for a couple months and then became very broad and then I kind of got lost in the whole world of like what am I talking about, what am I going to do. And then I would say probably like 6 months ago is when I really started to kind of find more of my like voice in a way of like this is how I'm going to help people and this is how I'm going to connect. And I got to like basically what I'm doing right now, right, which is basically helping creators start creators who want to start like their coaching slash consulting business and helping them kind of navigate like themselves and also navigate the best system or framework for them to kind of implement and start so that they can go out there and kind of help people out or kind of give them this transformation that they seek in a way, right? So yeah, like it's been a long journey. It's been fun, obviously some ups and downs in terms of like trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing type of thing. But yeah, I would say like it was, like I said, a year, 3, 4 months ago. I kind of just said like, you know what, like let's try this out. And then fast forward to now, it's been going great so far, and I enjoy every second of it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of a wild ride from the starting with
Yeah,
the stocks and then all the way
yeah, I
down.
was everywhere,
Yeah, that's
everywhere.
kind of cool. It's like cool though, and like a lot of people go through a journey kind of similar to that where they don't really know what they're doing. Do you have any, like looking back now, what would you kind of like think about giving advice to yourself a year ago when you were thinking about stocks, or you were talking about stocks, and then you through that whole process, is there any advice that you could give for someone who's kind of like, oh, they're just talking about whatever right now? Maybe it's stocks, maybe it's mindset, maybe it's self improvement, but like for like kind of finding their passion as you did, or uncovering that a
Yeah,
little bit to like find their actual voice and what they want to talk about.
yeah. I kind of tell this to a lot of the people that I'm helping now, right? Is just like I I'd say like start with kind of like self-reflection, right? Like start with like what kind of drives you? What are you passionate about? What are you excited about? All these type of things that kind of like it relates to you and resonates to you, right? Um, Obviously at the time when I was doing that, like stocks, the day trading, all that type of stuff, like that resonated with me at the time, right? And but then eventually you have to do and you have to try to see if it really speaks to you, right? So like I think it took me a long journey to kind of get to where I am now, but I think it was necessary to go through that because that's kind of what I advocate for. It's like just try, give yourself a chance and see if it truly speaks to you. So like that's kind of what I tell people um to kind of approach it that way because like how are you going to know, right? Like you have to give yourself a chance and really talk about it. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. Like those, and you know it, right? Like your body knows it, you know it. It's just like maybe it doesn't feel right. It doesn't speak to you. It doesn't ignite like that fire in you type of thing, right? Um, but that's kind of what I try to tell people, if that makes sense, right? It's just like
Yeah.
just seek something that you're passionate about, right? And work with it, do work with it, right? Um, Eventually, if it doesn't resonate with you anymore, maybe it's just a side passion type thing, and that's okay, right? And then like what I realized was like I enjoy helping people. I enjoy like helping people navigate like the ins and outs of like maybe what they're going through, like the difficulties of maybe this business or of any sort of journey that they're on. And like I started implementing like the self-improvement stuff that I did as an athlete, the self-improvement stuff that I did, as I built my other business or as I built my real estate business as well, right? And then naturally, as I connected with people, talked to people, and started to see maybe very similar like patterns of what they were dealing with, right? And those are things that I dealt with in the past. I was like, this is perfect because like I know exactly what they're dealing with. Like I can help them, and then by doing that, I'm helping people, and also just learning more about myself and learning more about the overall issue. And it's like a win-win in my eyes. And then from there, I just kind of started to reiterate, double down, and just kind of pushed forward with it ultimately, and then slowly evolved. But yeah,
Yeah.
if that all makes sense. I know that was probably a lot, but yeah,
No, no, it makes perfect sense, man. That's cool. I see a lot of people kind of bounce around and do like all these different things. And I'm kind of big on what you said as well about like it's that self-reflection, but it's also actually doing it. Like when you start
yeah,
writing about something, and this is like my experience too with it is when I start writing and I can keep writing, and it's like, man,
yeah,
I'm just like, I'm excited to write my newsletter. I'm excited to create content. Like I enjoy speaking. Like you can feel it. Whereas some of the
yeah,
other things, and I've kind of wrote about some other things and stuff too. I don't have probably quite as many on my list as you had in there. I think I
yeah,
have one or two other things that I started with, but um, you just kind of get burnt. You just kind of get tired of it. And you can't, like, I found that when I couldn't think of something to write about on my topic that I was writing, like that wasn't it for me then, cause like where I'm
yeah,
at right now, it's like, man, I can sit down any time of the day and think of something to write, and I just have like endless ideas flowing and it's natural, it's like, this is me.
yeah,
So yeah, that
yeah,
really resonates with me. I think
yeah. And
that's,
like to no, sorry, keep going. Keep going. Sorry.
I think that I agree. That's part of the journey. That like that's what you need to
Yeah,
do, and that's the way to find it.
yeah. What I was gonna add was like I was having a conversation with someone the other day about this too. Was like for example, like I tried like drop shipping. I tried like SMMA, like the social media agency type stuff. I did like FBA. I did um what else did I do? trying to think. Whatever. I did those things, right? Just to kind of try them out. And kind of like you're saying, like give yourself a chance to try it out and kind of see if it speaks to you. And also what we were talking about was like there's gonna be obstacles that you face, right? And I part of me was like, honestly, you're always gonna face some certain obstacle in each one, right? And I say like allow yourself to kind of try to overcome it, and if you overcome it, you'll probably have a better feeling if this truly resonates with you, right? And I can tell you like with my drop shipping and like FBA type stuff, like the biggest thing for me was like the marketing side, how to like position everything, the ads and all that type of stuff. And then I kind of got it, and then I got like my first sale, for example. But then after that, I was like, this is awful. Like I don't enjoy this at all.
Yeah,
I'm pushing myself. I'm trying to overcome this issue, but I have no passion of like this is like an exciting challenge, if that makes sense,
yeah,
right? Like for me, it was just like this is just like it felt like a burden, right? And like I think
yeah,
that's kind of like the difference. Hopefully, if this is making sense of like kind of what you're saying, like if you're working on something or talking about something or writing about something, or you're facing the obstacle within that realm, it's going to be exciting for you because you're like, I love this. I want to beat this, and I want
yeah,
to accomplish, and I want to get better at it. So like you're going to find every single way to do it, right? So I feel like that kind of connects with like allow yourself to have the opportunity to face those challenges, but then I think after you overcome them, or if you don't, you'll get a maybe better insight or better clarity of like this resonates with me, or like this is not for me at the end of the day, right? Um, so maybe give yourself a chance to fail. Probably, I don't know. I don't know the right wording, but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, 100%, man. And that's like just such a big thing about people who like struggle and I talk
yeah,
to so many who like struggle with something and they get hit with some adversity or some obstacles and they kind of just crumble and like they're just
yeah,
everything falls apart and it's the stress and it's like part of that has to do with the adversity and the obstacles are something in an area that they already don't like. So
Yeah.
it just makes it infinitely harder to overcome this
Yeah.
already hard challenge that you're facing, whether it's in business or even like, with your spouse or like relationships or
Yeah.
any area of life, right? Fitness or something, like if you hate going to the gym and then you face a difficult workout, like you're not going to do it, like you're already
Yeah.
like, I'm
You're gonna
already,
be like,
so it's
I'm
like,
out. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, when you're working on things that you really enjoy or like really love, you embrace those obstacles more, and they're so much easier to overcome. It's just such a
Yeah.
mental like I found that like immensely in my life that
Yeah.
helps. That is like something that can push you over the top or just like smash you.
Yeah, I agree because it's like I said, it's like a healthy challenge, right? It's an
Yeah,
exciting challenge, right? Of like I know if I overcome this, I'm gonna learn from it, and I might fail, I might or I might win from it, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna learn. It's gonna make me better within what I'm trying to do, right? So I think it comes down to kind of exactly what you said. Like I think a
yeah,
lot of us are just forcing ourselves to kind of do something or create something that we don't enjoy just because maybe we're just following the trend or we're following what people want us to do type of thing. And then you kind of fall into this trap again of like, okay, like I don't enjoy any of this again now. So I got to start
yeah,
back from ground zero type of thing, right?
yeah. Yeah, it always comes back to like for me, and this is one of the big things that I kind of push is like finding that passion, and it's just so hard to find, I think sometimes, and
Yeah.
you get these things that you think are your passion, but like you kind of find out they're not, but then you tell yourself, well, I loved doing this a week ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever. And so you keep pushing and next thing you know, you're just burned out, you're done. And it's like,
Yeah.
but like you said, you just have to try things, man, like sit
Yeah.
down, think about things you liked as a child, think about things that you've always enjoyed doing and try different things and give it a shot. But you also have to be willing, like, to quit, like stop. Like you have to be
Yeah.
willing to pull the plug on it and be like, I don't enjoy this anymore. And I
I
think a
agree.
lot of people like miss both points, but the ones that find the
Yeah.
first, and then some people go way past the quitting point,
Yeah.
and that can be
Yeah.
dangerous too.
Yeah. I feel
But
like part of me feels like it's like kind of what I was saying, like, for example, like the stocks that I was doing, right? Like, the day trading stuff, like I enjoyed it. Like I loved the day trading. I loved the adrenaline and all that type of stuff. But like I was like, I can't really help people with this type of stuff. Like I can't like I'm no expert. I'm no nothing like this. Like I don't enjoy talking to people, be like, do this, do that type of thing. Cause like I'm still figuring out my for myself, right? But like for me, like it turned into a hobby that I love, right? So like for me, it's like I still do it on the side. I don't day trade. I just do more long-term investing now, right? And then the real estate again was like it got to a point where I am I do it still on the side. It's like a hobby. I don't even know if I consider it as a hobby, but it's more of like I guess they're both like side businesses, right, in a way, right?
yeah,
Um, but like same thing, like I got to a point when I was talking about that, I was just like like I don't enjoy talking about this all the time. Like I enjoy like finding properties and all that type of stuff, but like trying to help other people, I do enjoy that. But like at the same time, it's like doing all the research, all that type of stuff, writing everything about it, and then presenting it. I was like, it doesn't resonate with me. Like I'd rather just kind
yeah,
of like focus on something else that feels more purposeful, right? And that's kind of what came down to like this whole like I would say self improvement and down into very niching down and evolving into what I'm doing now. Where for me, there's like it like speaks to me. Like I have no like friction with it at all. Um, so I feel like sometimes you have an idea, but maybe it turns into like a hobby or something that you can still do, but
yeah,
it's not maybe the true calling that you have in a way. That maybe that truly resonates with you. But yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. While we're on that topic, do you want to? I know you kind of briefly mentioned it a couple minutes ago, but you want to just kind of define what you do for everyone that's listening, and how you help people out.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, like I help people, like basically like any sort of like online creators at the moment right now, or people who want to create kind of like their coaching slash consulting offer slash business. I kind of just help you navigate building the whole framework, understanding, who you want to target, you know, from what experience or from through self-reflection, all that type of stuff of like, okay, I'm going to help this person accomplish X, Y, and Z with my, X framework type thing. So like I basically help you from like A to Z type of thing with that whole thing. So that basically you're in a position of saying like, I have this experience or I have this skill that I've overcome. I'm very passionate about it. I want to help other people with it. So we build it out and then you put yourself out there in a position of like, okay, let's start helping people out. So I basically help them navigate all that. And also like I do a lot of like mindset stuff with it too, because like, you know, when you're creating a business, like there's so many moving parts, right? There's information overload, like you feel you have to do this when you actually should be doing that. You may be feeling like imposter syndrome, you're not confident enough in your ability and all that type of stuff, right? You have these limiting beliefs. So like sometimes we just have to take a step back, tone it down, and just kind of take baby steps towards it, right? So I try to navigate all that and help people navigate that whole process, as you probably know, right? When you built your business is like it's not easy, right? It takes time and
Yeah.
like we have to like, you know, kind of like affirm ourselves and reaffirm like our capabilities and what we've accomplished in the past and use those, I think, those experiences and that power that you create to kind of say like, yes, you can. Like you can do this because you've accomplished X, Y, and Z in the past. You've accomplished these 10 things. You've accomplished this, etc., whatever, right? And sometimes people just need that little push or that little light um, on those aspects to really like motivate them and kind of like, I guess, block the negative voices at times or the negative
Yeah.
noise that we may have within ourselves. And then through that, like I said, you build a business and then you start going through that, whichever one comes up. If more stuff pop up, we navigate that. And then, we just make sure that we're in a position where we're confident in ourselves and our ability. And then we know that we can help people out as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's super important too. And like, I was kind of laughing. I think like it's so funny how we marginalize like some of the accomplishments that we have. Like we marginalize
Yeah.
them, but then we like amplify our failure, like in our head, like
Yeah.
for example, like I did a 50 mile, and this is a really funny one that it always hits me because so I did a 50-mile run last year, um, and in my mind, it's like, oh, I did a 50, and it was a big deal at the time, like when I finished, I was like, oh man, like that's awesome, and
Yeah.
but now it's like I kind of don't really think about it or consider it too much now, but like when I tell other people about it, like I had this conversation with a guy the other day, and I was like, yeah, I did because I'm training for another one right now, for this summer, and I was telling him about it. I was like, yeah, I did a 50. He's like, holy shit. He's like, you ran 50 miles? And he's like looking at me, and I was like, yeah, like no big deal. But then I was like, well, it actually kind of is, people don't do it. And
Yeah.
it's like, but we like, I think just the way we're built, like we kill like the accomplishments that we have, but then we always like amplify these like, oh, I failed at this or this or this. And it's
Yeah.
like you said, like I think that's really good to just like think back on things that like you did because they're probably some pretty big things, like a lot of people have
Yeah,
done some really
definitely.
big things. So I
Definitely.
think that's
Like
really
it's
important.
yeah, like it's there's so much to it. Like I try to like tell people like I can think of one example of someone I talked to. I don't want to go into like in depth about it, but like they kept saying like, "Oh, I've never accomplished anything." Like I've always been told that when I start something, I can't finish it. Like my parents tell me that, my family tell like my parents, my family, my friends always say, "Hey, when you start something, you never kind of commit and finish it." And I was like, "Well, that's not true because at the end of the day, like you graduated from college, so you started
Yeah.
something, you finished it, right? You graduated high school, right? You were probably in sports teams, which he was, right? He had addictions as well. I'm like, you overcame those addictions, right? So like you're kind of selling yourself short. Like you have this whole list of like all these things that you've accomplished, and it's like basically attacking that like I don't know, like that phrase that you're telling yourself of like or that statement, right? Of like every time I start something I don't accomplish it, right? I'm like, no, it's BS, right? Because like you have a list of 20 things that you've accomplished that a lot of people might be going through that right now and they haven't accomplished it yet, right? And it's like even something so simple of like graduating high school, like that's a big accomplishment for a lot of people, or graduating college, anything, right? So it's funny how like you're saying like sometimes we just try to like any sort of win or victory that we have, we just try to be like, we minimize it, right? We're like, nah, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything, you know? But like,
Yeah.
compared to other people, it's like, it could be the biggest thing for them. You know, I know people who would like kill for the world to graduate college, right? To be able to
Yeah.
attend college, all that type of stuff, right? So it's just
Yeah.
perspective as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So kind of talking about those lines along the business lines here, what are some challenges that you faced in kind of building your business? I know we already talked about the kind of finding your voice and stuff, but since you've kind of
Yeah.
found, what are some challenges you faced? I'm sure there's just, ton of people out there that are going through that thing where they don't know what they're doing. They're pulled in a million directions. If you can, and
Yeah.
how you overcame them as well.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me, right, is, and it was always like this, was just like the information overload aspect, right? Um, I think, when we start out, like we're eager, we wanna get this going, we're motivated, right? So we try to take in as much information as possible, and then next thing you know, it's like you're getting pulled in different directions, right? So like within my business, when I was trying to like find the proper way of like how to like create the proper framework, or how to position it, or how to create my branding, or how to write everything, like I was just all over the place. Like people are like,
Yeah,
I remember like, oh, pick 3 to 5 pillars and talk about that and have that connect to your offer type of thing, right? Or just be like, or people would be like, just focus on one pillar and just talk about that every single time type of thing, right? Um, so like that I know was a big thing for me, because like I got to a point where I did burn out, like for probably like a week. I was like, I got to give myself a week to kind of like, reset and really try to like dive into one thing and just kind of stick with it. And, that's kind of what I did. Like the whole like process of like I said, like when I was telling you, like finding your niche, trying to like navigate all that type of stuff, right? I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna focus on one thing of just talking to people and just understand their problems. And then from there,
yeah,
I started to gain more info. As I gained more info, took in the data that I heard or whatever, right? Started to realize more problems that they'd be dealing with, or similar problems. And then from there, I was able to kind of like dissect and create solutions for that. And then eventually that kind of just became it, it just simplified everything for me, right? Instead of just like doing research all the time, um, just like a bunch of different stuff like research, right? Talking to people, doing content, trying to build a newsletter as well, all this type of stuff. Like my energy was everywhere, right? So I was just like, let's just focus on one and then kind of make it as smooth as possible and simple as possible for myself, right? So like that's one of the biggest things I think our biggest solutions for myself, I would say, right, was like just simplify the process for me, because like the information overload, the different directions, like just kind of kills you, right? Um, like that was a big one, right? And then, I guess to go into like within, I would say like the writing aspect on X, right? The content creation aspect, like I think that was a big challenge for me as well, because I was never naturally a good writer in school, right? So like that was like a challenge and a skill that I had to learn, right? And that took practice, and that's just by doing, right? I think the way I overcame that, like I would say I'm no true expert yet, but I have improved, and people have told me that they've seen improvement, which is good, right? But like that was just basically just like doing it, right? It's just kind of putting myself out there, seeing which content kind of works, the ones that kind of resonate the most with people. Hopefully it's more like authentic and coming from you, and not like the typical like growth guru asking questions, all this type of stuff, right? Type of thing that a lot of people post, but things that really talk about, like the problems that you're trying to help, the problems that you're trying to solve, and like the solutions that you have. And then from there you kind of reiterate and see like, okay, this post did well, this post didn't do well. Let's double down on the post that did well and kind of elaborate more on that. And then eventually, as time goes on, you start to kind of get feedback of like, okay, all these posts have been doing well. Let's focus on those. And then it's the same thing. Okay, post number one did well, break it down into 3 different posts. Two of them did right. Let's focus on those two. And then you kind of like keep doubling down and multiplying them, if that makes sense, hopefully. Um, so like that is I would say a challenge that I face and slowly have been getting better at. And I could say like to the point right now, it's been helpful in terms of doing that because like people are saying that like, hey, your content really connects with me. Like I this is what I'm dealing
Yeah.
with. It's been really helpful. It's been really insightful. And then that just leads into like having easier conversations with people where you're in a position that you can help them, right? Um, but it's still a learning process, right? There's still more to go. I can tell you another probably challenge that I'm going to be facing too is like just the sales process as well, right? And this was like in my other businesses that I have too, is like the sales process is always a challenge. And that's just and like the biggest solution I felt for me that resonated was just being you and being honest and not trying to force the sale and just kind of having a conversation, building the relationship and focusing on, let's say, the client or focusing on them at the end of the day and making sure that it's a good fit and the right fit of you guys working together type of thing. Um, but yeah, I would say those are a couple things.
Yeah, those are they all sound pretty
Yeah.
familiar to me. That was like, man, I tell you, when I was building my business out, it was God. I was just pulling the like my to-do list was just like 3 miles
Yeah.
long, and it's like you're trying to work a little bit here, a little bit here, and it's like you got to cut all the shit and just like really focus in, find the tasks that are like actually gonna, move the needle for you. And that
Yeah.
took me a while. Like I was just pulled all over. And finally, once I sat down and I was like, okay, I need to cut this, cut this, cut. Like if I keep trying to work on all this stuff, I'm never going to get anything done. And
Hmm.
that was that was like, I mean, kind of like how you said it too. It just kind of changed the game for me, where I was like just plateaued, like okay, we're getting nothing, and then all of a sudden I was just like, okay, now we're moving,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
so
It's crazy.
it's tough, but it's
Yeah.
you gotta like
Just keep it simple.
yeah,
We just got to keep it
yeah,
simple. Like that's like I always say, simplify to multiply and amplify. It's like
yeah,
uh, it's so true. For me, it's so true. Like if I try to like you know you try to be a jack of all trades, you're trying every single thing. Like you're not putting your full attention and energy into one area, right?
yeah.
And it's gonna bleed out and eventually burn out type of thing. So like what I mean is just like just keep it simple, and then from there, like you'll see hopefully from feedback, from conversations, networking, all this type of stuff, what you may be doing right and what you're not doing right. And then from there you just focus on the things that are going well. And then eventually it starts to evolve and things kind of fall into place.
Yeah, 100%. I think that especially on a platform like Twitter and X, like it's just the feedback. Like even what you said with the writing, man,
Yeah.
the coolest part about that is you get literally almost instantaneous feedback,
Instant.
like,
Yep. It's
and it's so
just like that.
cool. Yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
man. And it's so cool. And
Yeah.
like I don't know if everyone's doing like what you mentioned, but like I do that, man. Like I have something, I'll write something and I might think it's great or I might not know or whatever, but you kind of post it and like you get the feedback, right? And you get nothing and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this sucked, and then you just take a second and be like, okay, what did I do in this one? And you look at the formatting, how you structured it, like all the little things, right? And then you
Yeah.
like kind of look at the posts that just go bananas and you're like, okay. And you look at how you wrote and it's like it's so cool, man. I just love that. You instantly
Yeah.
know, right? Like a couple hours and you're like, okay, obviously don't do this again, or this was great.
Yeah,
Like I
exactly.
wonder why this was great. But
Yeah, or it's like you could always have like one thing that flops that's still a good idea, but you just have to change the wording around type
yeah,
of thing. And it's just
yeah,
like it's trial and error again, right? It's
yeah,
like I've done it where like I had one like for example, I had a post that did not do well, and then I was like, all right, and I was like, why not? Like this is good info. Like I know this is good info, right? And then I like basically took it back, simplified it, dumbed it down a little, right?
yeah,
And I think in like 2 weeks I did it again, and it kind of not exploded, but did like 5 times better than the
yeah,
original one, right? So I was like, okay, like so then you kind of realize like, okay, this is the style that really works and really helps, and then you learn from that, right, for future cases and stuff like that, right? But it's the same thing you said. It's like the instant feedback. I think that's like one of the best things, right? Because like with I feel like other types of businesses or stuff like that, like it takes time to get the feedback. Like you have to do a
yeah,
lot we're still doing a lot with writing, researching, all that type of stuff. But like it's like that. You get it back. You can bring it back. I what I do is I put everything all my like winning tweets or my tweets that do well, right? I just put them in like a mini Hall of Fame type thing, and then I just kind of reiterate them and change
Yeah.
them, and then like kind of elaborate more and break them down or into different types of posts, and then from there I'm like, okay, cool. And the next thing you know, and you do that for 2 months, 3 months, you have like 100 ideas that you can talk about, and then that
Yep.
slowly evolves as well, right? So
Yep.
yeah,
That was
it's a game.
starting to do that was like just a huge game changer for me because
Yeah,
when you have like this automatic bank that you can go to, right? And I just like throw
yeah.
them all in a Notion file, right? And like you have this automatic bank, it just like gets you off this hamster wheel of sitting there
Yeah,
trying to come up with stuff. So
just
so
makes it
nice,
easier,
but
especially when you're stuck, right? Like there's days like for me, like some days like my creativity is just like shot. Like I wake up and I'm like, what am I writing, right? And then like that
yeah,
goes into like a whole other discussion and plan. But like sometimes it's good to like look back, be like, okay, like it's good, and then you just it starts kind of giving you fuel or creativity for some other ideas at the end of the day.
yeah, for sure. I think
Yeah,
we all have those days. But um, speaking of
yeah.
those days, and I know you mentioned a little bit of burnout and stuff earlier, but so how do you kind of find balance in your life to push yourself and to work through all this stuff, build the business, but also kind of avoiding that burnout or like exhaustion? I know for me, like I'm a big like work harder. Like the answer is always work harder kind of guy. So like I'm like
Yeah,
I mean I'm self aware of it, so I know that like when I start getting frustrated, I know my immediate reaction is going to be work harder, so that I'll generally stop myself and I'm like, okay, let's take a step back and look at this thing. Let's zoom
yeah,
out. So like, how do you manage like avoiding that burnout, but also working?
yeah. I'm the same way. I'm very like go, go, go. Like double
Yeah,
down if it's not working, triple down if it's not working,
yeah,
quadruple down if it's not working. I'm not quitting, I'm keep going type of thing. And then if I burn
yeah,
out, be like, I'm not burning out, like kind of
yeah,
become delusional a little, right?
yeah,
But
yep,
um like I think for me the biggest thing is like mindfulness, right? It's very like just being aware, being self-aware, right? It's just like I know when I'm getting to that point, like my body feels it, I feel it. So like kind of what I do is just like I give myself the break that I need, right? And that's going for a walk, right? Just to kind of get a fresh air, kind of get to relax, right? I do that. Or I just play some music and kind of relax and listen to music, right? Or I go to the gym, I do that type of stuff, right? Or I meditate. Like it just really feels on like kind of like what I like it all depends on what I'm feeling at the time, right? Like if something says like, oh, like maybe I should go to the gym, I'll go to the gym, right? Or
yeah,
if I want to take a nap, I'll take a nap, right? If I like I kind of just see what really speaks to me at the moment. But I think the biggest thing is just the self-awareness aspect, kind of like what you brought up briefly, right? So I try to be very mindful of that. And then, like I said, like I said, I'm very go, 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 but I also try to do like kind of like the 80/20 rule, right? Where it's like I try to give myself like I do time blocks as much as possible, right? But like I also allow myself like if I'm in the mood or I'm in the zone, like screw the time block. I'm gonna keep going until I get done what I want to get done type of thing, right? Or I also do it where it's like I need a time block, like follow it type of thing, right? I'm very like I just kind of listen to my body, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Um, and just make sure there's some sort of balance in there where I'm not completely burning out or feeling exhausted all the time. So it's just like I said, like all that type of stuff that I previously said.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's very tough, I think, for people to have that self-awareness. I mean, it really was for me for the longest time. And then like the next
Yeah,
step of that was like starting to recognize it. And like my when I start feeling tired during the days and sluggish, I know that I'm like pushing too hard. The toughest thing for me was like
hmm,
convincing myself that it's okay to take like a step back and just like
breaks.
relax, to
Yeah,
like like sleep
yeah,
in, just take a nap, like that kind of stuff, right? Like just don't
Yeah.
work for a day, like convincing myself that that was like good. Like just take a day off from work, like just go hang out with the family, do whatever,
Yeah.
nothing. Go to take
Yeah.
the kid to the pool. But like that drives me nuts.
Yeah. I still struggle with that, like I think because it's, like I always say, it's like, I always try to say, like, it's because, like, we're high achievers and we expect a lot from ourselves, right? Maybe because of, like, our past experiences. Like, maybe for you, because you're, as a veteran and your experience in the army, right? And special forces, like, there's a standard, right? And you stick to that
Yeah.
standard and you have to reach that standard every day. That's kind of what I felt, obviously, as an athlete. Like, there's a standard I got to reach. I got
Hmm.
to beat the standard and I got to beat my competition. So, like, it's like a constant battle that you have within yourself, right? But also it's like I try to remind myself like it's not that serious now, type of thing, right? But still serious. It's
Yeah.
that's the balance, right? Where like
Yeah.
there's days where like I'm like tired, I'm like exhausted, I want to take a break, and I'm like, oh, like I'll take a break for an hour, and then within that hour, I'm like, I need to get back, I need to get back, like I'm like
Yeah.
tweaking, like,
Yeah.
and sometimes I just gotta be like shut the mind off and do that. So like that's where, like I said, like the mindfulness aspect really helps me because it's like it actually allows me to shut my mind off and not think about it. And then when I come back to it, I'm like a completely different person at times. So, but like I said, there's moments where I'm just like, I can't do this. I gotta go back, like type of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know that feeling well, man. It's tough. It's tough, and like you mentioned, that is kind of how I am with the standard too. Like, and it's
yeah,
just like being accepting of yourself. That that's how you are, and that's what you want to do. But also like understanding that it's like a bigger picture than the amount of work you're going to get done
yeah,
today. Like being able to step back, and I talk about like zooming out all the time because like I get
hmm,
like super hyper focused on the task, and I don't like there's things going on around, but like if you don't notice the things going around, like your body, the feelings in your body and stuff, and that's one of the biggest benefits that I've noticed from mindfulness, like utilizing mindfulness and practicing, every morning has been like I start to I understand my body more. I feel these things that are going on. Even when I'm like hyper
yeah,
focused, I can feel the tiredness. I can feel like the ache starting in a certain part of my back, or it starts, I can
yeah,
feel these emotions rising, and that allows me to actually, like when I start feeling things, that's when I like, okay, we just need to step back and take like a 5 minutes to figure out what's going on right now, and then we'll decide from there. And that has been
yeah.
like
Just
a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, I use them like all those things. It's like just cues to like taper down, take a step back, just relax. Like, and that was the biggest thing is like, I think naturally as an athlete as well, right? For me, my experience, it's like I was always in tune with my body and understanding like, okay, I'm getting tired, I'm getting fatigued, like, and then you have to kind of change a little and adapt to the situation, but you got to still be able to perform, right? Where like the biggest lesson here, it's like it's very similar, but also it's like you have more leeway. It's not like obviously in a game, right? It's like if I decide to take a playoff, they score, we lose, right? Like
Yeah.
that type of thing, right? And maybe in your situation, in the in special operations and stuff like that, like if you're not aware, like it's life or death, right? Like
Yeah.
it's they're very not, I don't want to say soccer, a game in special forces is the same, but like they're like extreme parts of the
Yeah.
spectrum
Yeah.
type thing, if that makes sense. Hopefully my
Yep.
wording's right, right? Where like in the business aspect now, like we're probably still taking that frame, right? Or
Yeah.
that state of I can't think of like I can't even think of words right now. Um like that same atmosphere, I guess, when reality it's like it's not the same. Like we're allowed to kind of like take the play off, or just relax and then get back into it so that we can continue to progress forward type of thing. Um but yeah.
Yeah. It's like the total opposite now of what it was then, kind of. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
your analogy is real good. And like the military teaches you, like, oh, you're feeling pain, you're feeling this and that. Cool, push through. Like
Deal
you're
with it.
moving on, you're
Yeah.
going
Deal
on,
with
go on.
it.
So
You're
like, and I
fine.
know sports. I played sports growing up. It was the same way, man. I remember my
Yeah.
football coach, like if you're laying on the field, you better have a broken bone. You better
Yeah,
not be able to walk off. And it's like, oh,
exactly.
okay, like I got you. So, but it's like
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's just, it's like it's such a short-term view, and
Yeah,
learning
it
to
is.
look long-term has like helped me big time.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's funny how you when you really take a look at it from a big perspective, you're like, okay, like it could hold you back at times, right? But it's
Yeah,
also very valuable the stuff that it's taught you. Um, but yeah,
yeah, for
the
sure.
balance.
Speaking of long term, we'll hit one more question here. What do you think, or how do you approach goal setting in general, like planning for future and then ensuring kind of your long term success, sustainability, just like your
Yeah.
overall outlook when you're kind of
Yeah.
planning things out.
Um, yeah, I mean, I goal set every year, right? Um, I I goal set, I do vision boards, I do all that type of stuff because it's really like I enjoy it, right? And I like to kind of be very specific on what I want to do. Um, this is where I go more towards like the mindfulness approach slash spiritual approach. I don't know what you want to call it, right? Of like the visualizing, the affirmations, um, being very specific on what I want to get and what I want to achieve. And then basically kind of like reverse engineering it of like breaking it down, right? Like that's kind of how I approach everything um, with long-term goals and even like short-term goals, right? Um, but
Hmm.
also what I try to do too is I don't beat myself up. I used to beat myself up a lot for not accomplishing them, right? So I've been better at that of like saying like, hey, at the end of the day, like if my goal was to make, I don't know, like like reach 5,000 followers on X so that I can help build my business type thing, but I've reached 3,000, like for me, that's 3,000 more than zero, right? Like I've still made progress. It's not the 5,000 that I wanted, but I've still made the progress that I'm still trying to work. So like I try to find like the positives in them in most cases, and not try to beat myself up for it, right? So like, um, yeah, that's kind of like what my approach is now. It's like I still try to set actionable, achievable goals, right?
Yeah,
And so that I can get momentum, build off that momentum and continue to push forward, but also have like a fine balance of like achievable ones and also ones that are a little bit of a stretch that continue to push me and drive me forward in a
yeah,
way if that all makes sense. So like it's and that adjusts throughout the year too. Like I realized like I told you before, like my goal for this year was within 6 months to kind of start a podcast as well and build that off. But then, other things are kind of happening that I want to focus on. So I'm pushing that back a little and I'm okay with that because for me, it's like, I know I'm going to get to that point eventually, but I want to focus on the stuff that are more important, like the bigger goals that I have in mind that eventually will lead me to create that podcast, to be more successful later on type of thing. But, um, yeah, that's kind of my whole approach with that type of stuff. It's like
yeah, man. That's
that.
that's good. That's cool. That's kind of similar. Like I mean, I have same as you. I have the problem with like, man, if I don't hit something, it's like
Yeah.
I just like, and it goes back to that standard thing, right? Like I just kind of hold myself to this standard. So when I don't hit it, and it's funny because like I like to set like these super high. I'm like a big advocate of
Yeah.
like setting huge goals, right? Like because I think that's what makes you like push, right? So I set
Hmm.
these like super high goals, and when like I miss I miss them or miss milestones or something, I'm just like pissed at myself. But like
Yeah.
it's really it really comes back to me, and this is something that I've like really been working on in the past couple months, like 6 months or so, is like understanding that it's all a part of the process and all a part of the journey. And yeah, obviously you don't want to miss the goal, right? Like that's not, you don't set it planning on missing it, but like things happen, and when it goes wrong, like it's okay. You can sit down and be like, okay, cool. I missed, today was the day I wanted to have whatever done by, like today was the day I want to have my podcast launched. I missed it, and being like, "Oh, it's all right." But then you can also like take, write down, like, why did I miss it or what happened,
Yeah.
if it's like a fitness goal or something where it's like, okay, like I was going to try and lose 25 pounds by in 60 days and I'm at the 6-day mark and I'm only lost 20 pounds. Like, one, that's awesome. You still lost 20 pounds. But two, like, did I do everything I could have along the journey, or did I have a couple cheat meals? Did I
Yeah.
skip the gym a couple, like find out where or why. And like, there's just really valuable lessons learned. And I used to not do any of that. I used to kind of just get pissed at
Yeah.
myself and, just be
No, I
upset with
think
myself and
I
push
think
myself harder.
I think that's I love that. I love that aspect of like kind of like self-reflecting of like, okay, why didn't I achieve this? What didn't work? What was I doing right? And then from there, you're just tweaking it and you're trying to like, then therefore you can hold yourself more accountable, maybe become more disciplined, be more consistent with it, all that type of stuff, right? And kind of like what I think you briefly said or brought up, like someone that told me once was like, let's say you've set a goal for 6 months of like, in this example, it was like about real estate, right? They're like, you know, are you really going to beat yourself up if your 6 month goal was to get your first property, but you end up getting your property on month seven? Like, no, because your goal was to get a property, right? So, like, at the end of the day, like in the 6 months, like you've been putting the work and consistent work, after the 6 months, maybe you failed in a way in your own mind. So you motivated yourself to kind of push forward more. And then month seven, you happened, right? So then self reflect on that of like, okay, what didn't I do right within the first
Yeah.
6 months? What did I do differently within that short time period to get it done, right? And then from there, just kind of like at the same time leads to like just don't beat yourself up because at the end of the day, you still accomplished the goal that you wanted, but it just took longer than expected, which happens at times, right? Like sometimes I think I know I can be like delusional with that, be like, oh, I can get this done in 3 months, but in reality, it probably takes like a year to do it,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
so like after 3 months, you're like, what the hell's going on? Like, I knew I could get this done, but like it takes time. And like you said, there's so many other factors as well, um, but that ties into other stuff as well, I think. But like, I think that's the biggest thing is just like allow yourself to, I think I really enjoy the self-reflection stuff you're talking about. Like, it's good to do that, but also maybe don't beat yourself up for not accomplishing some stuff, because there's so many factors as well, right? But I also don't want to be making excuses of like, like
Yeah.
it's not acceptable as well, right? It's a fine balance too. It's hard to explain. Like I can't really
Yeah.
explain it, but like I think you know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah. It's a
um,
fine line in there
yeah. So,
for
but
sure.
yeah,
It's tough to find sometimes. Like, I struggle with it big time because I want to beat
yeah,
myself up, and then I also learn from it and try to tell myself it's okay. But then I'm like, well, if I tell myself it's okay, then I'm gonna be okay with missing my other goal, and it's like you're just back and forth, right? It's just this
yeah,
back and forth battle, and it's like, oh man. But I think as long as you come away learning something, like I think
yeah.
it's a journey, man. It's a lifelong process, lifelong journey, but I think it's
Yeah.
good.
And it's like you're also adding like unnecessary pressure on yourself as well. That
Yeah,
just leads into more just like creates chaos, right?
yeah,
Like I can talk about like I can think about like experiences for myself of like wanting to reach certain goals, I didn't reach it. Then I started putting more pressure on myself. Then I didn't like in the sports world, right? As a soccer player, like then I wasn't performing well because I put all this pressure on, and then I was more frustrated because I wasn't doing well and adding that pressure. And the next you know, like it leads to like burnout or exhaustion as well, right? Like, and it's just because maybe it was one simple thing of like I set this goal of I want to make national team camp, right? And I didn't. And then I went down this spiral and just completely like destroyed it. Now I'm worse off than what I was
yeah,
before I did all that
yeah,
whole journey, right? Where I just said like it's okay. Like if it didn't work out, it didn't work out, right? But that also ties into like I guess what you're trying to achieve too, right? Um but yeah, there's moments where we can be our biggest enemy at times.
yeah.
So yeah.
Oftentimes, I
Yeah.
think that's like a real good way to put it because I think
Yeah.
we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
More often than not, we are the only thing holding
Yeah.
ourselves back. So,
Definitely. Yeah.
but cool, man, cool.
Yeah.
That was cool talk. That's all I got for you. You got anything else you want to share where people can find you and stuff?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess just on X, right? I'm on X. I think my ad is built to thrive with no I, THRVE. I don't like the I. I think the I, for me, the I, it means like ego, right? And I think together as we create a business, as we help, we work one another, like we kind of got to get rid of the ego at times because, like we said, we can be our biggest enemies at times. So like that's part of it
Yeah.
right there. So you can reach me there, and yeah, just like I said, I'm always open to have a chat, always happy to help in any way possible, and just have a conversation. Really,
Dude, that's awesome.
that's all I
I
got.
didn't, that's the first time that, well, I guess I knew that you didn't have the I in there, but I
Yeah,
didn't know why. And that's awesome, man.
yeah.
It's actually really cool.
I know. I
Your whole
just, you know,
branding's super cool.
you know, it's funny too. I just realized the other day, like on my actual, like my handle doesn't have the I, but then on my actual name, I have the I, and I just realized that like a week ago, someone's like, "Oh, you have the I in your name." I'm like, "No, I don't." And then I looked, I'm like, "God damn, I guess I do." I'm like, "Crap." But like everything else, I don't have it, so I'm like, I gotta
Yeah.
do that. The blue check mark probably goes away, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of why I kind of get rid of the I because it's like I said, like our ego can be can either be our greatest friend or it can be our greatest enemy. And I think in this
Yeah.
moment when we build together, our ego like conflicting everybody knows when you have conflicting egos or someone who's very egotistical, it's like it's just impossible to work with people like that at times. So I try to avoid it. Um,
Yeah.
and try to avoid it in myself as well. So but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's cool. But yeah, that's all I got. I got, hit Chris up if you
No,
guys want anything. He's, easy to talk to. But,
yeah.
all right, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'll let you go. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for coming on again,
Yeah.
man. Really appreciate it. Great talk.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, I
All right, man.
enjoyed this.
Take
It
it
was
easy.
fun. I love
Yeah.
this. All right.
All right, man.
Have a
Take
good
it
one.
easy.